The Steam Deck just turned 1 year old recently, and I've had mine for about 6 months at this point. And I thought maybe it was time to revisit the deck and let you know my thoughts since purchasing mine since mid-September of last year. Spoiler, the Steam Deck has absolutely been my favorite gaming device since picking it up, so much so that I bought a second one. More on that later. Before we get too far into this video, a like to the video and a sub to the channel would be awesome. It's free, it's easy, and it helps me out more than you will ever know. Thank you. Also, stick around to the end of the video where I answer some questions from people on Twitter. It's something I haven't done before and I thought it would be kind of fun. Okay, physically, my Steam Deck has held up really well. No noticeable wear to be concerned about whatsoever. I haven't modified or done anything to my deck, and every single button, trackpad, and joystick still feels really great. I haven't had any issues with the hardware itself, and I'm still really happy with how it looks, feels, and performs while playing games. I'm a bit of a risk taker, so I still don't have a screen protector or a case on my device. I do, however, stow it in the carrying case that it comes with on the occasion that I do travel with it, which I still really appreciate that it comes with. Valve easily could have said nope and not given us a case. The Switch doesn't even come with its own case, but it does come with a dock. We can talk about the docking situation later. Knock on wood, I haven't dropped my deck, and the dogs have yet to stomp on the screen with their little feetsies. Generally, I'm very careful with my electronics, but sometimes I do wish that I had put a screen protector on just to preserve for the long term and protect against micro scratches. But then I probably would end up with a glossy screen protector, defeating the whole purpose of getting the 512GB model that I have here. Honestly, I haven't done the research to know if they make anti-glare screen protectors. Either way, I'm happy to report that other than some hand grease, this thing is holding up really well. Performance is the next topic that I'd like to touch on. In the beginning, I didn't really feel the need to change the refresh rate of the screen, change in-game settings much, or adjust much of anything at all. But now I do like to mess with the settings, depending on the game I'm playing now that I'm a bit more comfortable with the device. The biggest thing for me is changing the screen's refresh rate and matching that to the game's frame rate to get the best feeling gameplay out of it. For instance, when I was playing Spyro Reignited Trilogy, it defaulted to having most of the settings lowered, and I was totally fine with that. The game played great, and I didn't think I was really missing anything. But when I got more comfortable, I upped the settings just to see what it looked like, and I was honestly really impressed. But because I bumped the settings up, I got a bit lower of a frame rate because of it. So by locking the screen's refresh rate to 40 and locking the in-game FPS to 40, it felt much better. I was skeptical that this would make as big of a difference as it did, but seeing is believing in this case. So for those harder hitting, more graphically intensive games, try setting your screen's refresh rate to 40 and locking the game's FPS to 40 as well. And also setting your graphics settings appropriately. This will result in a less stuttery experience with the added benefit of better battery life. But for most indie games and 2D titles, this isn't a problem. Play those games at a full 60 FPS and you'll have a great time. I just mentioned battery life, and I know that this has been a hot topic amongst those that speak on their experiences with the deck. Some people claim that the Steam Deck has really poor battery life, and I could agree with that, but I want to be clear that most of the games I like to play currently, I don't really have an issue with the battery life. 1, the games I've been playing recently don't require a lot of power to play, and 2, if I decide to play a graphically intensive game, I'm typically positioned on the couch or laying in bed near my charger. Or if I'm at or near 100% battery, I don't usually play for longer than the battery lasts. Yes, if you're playing something that sucks back a lot of juice, you're going to need to stick close to a charger that can keep up with the 45 watts that the deck comfortably charges at. I think that the battery life on the Steam Deck is good, and I don't really need it to be any different than it currently is. However, if Valve decided to make a revised version of the Steam Deck with a bigger and better battery life, I don't think anyone would complain, unless it got heavier, in which case the SpongeBob armed of you may suffer a bit. So, what games have I actually been playing on my deck? Initially, I played and mostly completed Super Lucky's Tale, because I was really into the idea that I had to compare the deck to the Switch. And what better way to do that than with a good platformer? With no surprise, this game ran great. Following that, I started playing Spyro Reignited Trilogy, and so far, I've beaten the first game in the trilogy and had a great time with it. Like I mentioned, I changed the settings of the game to look a little better, and I've been really happy with the performance of this game on the deck. Hitman 3 works surprisingly well on the deck. although I did have some issues with the game locking up on me when it was installed on my SD card. But once I moved it to the internal SSD, everything has worked flawlessly since then. For reference, the Samsung SD card that I bought will be down in the description. It's within spec and I shouldn't have any issues with it, but I think it was just specifically an issue with Hitman, and I haven't had that problem with any other game. A buddy of mine has been streaming herself playing BioShock on YouTube, and I thought it would be a really great opportunity to play alongside her and enjoy one of my favorite classic games. BioShock Remastered runs flawlessly, and since it's a much older title, it sips power, which I was shocked to witness. Honestly, the battery life with this title is kind of insane. Today, I've been bouncing back and forth between Brotato, which I would say is kind of a mashup of Vampire Survivors with its gameplay loop, and The Binding of Isaac with its art style and items, and Dave the Diver, which is a game where you are a diver and you support and run a sushi restaurant with your deep sea findings. Both games look great, are easy to run, and are super fun. Oh, and there for a while, I was really into Hades. I haven't gotten back into it or beaten it yet, but I really love that game. This game lends itself really well to the Steam Deck's form factor. So I would say Hades is a perfect game to play on the Steam Deck, and I would highly recommend picking up this title if you get a Steam Deck if you haven't already. And lastly, playing Core Keeper co-op with my partner has been a lot of fun. I do think I prefer playing the game with a mouse and keyboard, but for spending quality time and just being able to sit or lay near my girlfriend while we play together, it's been really nice. Since the original video that I made back in October covering the Steam Deck, I've set up some emulation on my deck using EmuDeck, which made setting up all the emulators and things on my SD card very easy to do. And if I'm being totally honest, I haven't really done a ton of emulation since I set it up. I wanted to do it so that I could make comments on how easy it is just for the sake of informing you, the viewers. The most emulation I've done is play Diddy Kong Racing for a few hours because I watched some lore videos and some videos that talk about the development of the game. I was really fond of this game as a kid and I put a lot of hours into it, which makes me sad to think that we could have had more Diddy Kong Racing games, but it just never happened. Anyway, after fiddling with RetroArch and loading the correct N64 core, the game runs great at 60 FPS with no issues, which isn't really a surprise to me at all, seeing as how powerful the Steam Deck is and what it's capable of. Like I said I would mention earlier, let's talk about the docking situation. I'm going to be totally real with you guys and to tell you I haven't actually used any of my docks at all. All of the actual gaming I've done on my deck has all been handheld. For when I'm at home, which is most of the time, I have my gaming PC running Windows. When I'm on the go, I haven't had the need to hook up to an external display. And when I'm on the couch or laying in bed, I never have the desire to hook it up to the TV. Now, when I do plan to use the dock is when we travel for vacations where we'll spend extended amounts of time, or when I finally make my way back to Portland for PDX land. Either way, yeah, I'm using the docks way less than I thought I would. But hey, the option is still nice to have. Something else that I'd like to touch on quickly is the amount of constant and continued support that this hardware is getting. If something is wrong with the software on this thing, Valve is almost certainly aware of it and they're already trying to find a fix for it. In my last video where I said, the Steam machines of old walked so this could run, this is what I meant. They learned from their earlier hardware experiments and blunders to push out what we know as the Steam Deck today. Without those Steam machines and Steam controllers, the Steam Deck wouldn't be what it is. I've been running the stable version of SteamOS for the majority of the time with the deck, but if you're into the cool new features that you've heard about, or you like being a beta tester, the beta channel is also available to you. I can honestly say I'm still shocked at what this thing can do and how it has changed the way I prefer to game. Sure, I still can't play Warzone 2.0 on this thing, but who cares? And with the recent news that once the acquisition deal between Activision and Xbox finally goes through, we'll be able to stream Warzone on the deck with services like Xbox Cloud or Nvidia's GeForce Now. Back when I did my overview video of the Steam Deck a few months ago, that was one of my only gripes with the deck. With the release of Warzone 2.0, I was hungry to jump back into the battlefield and join my friends in some FPS Battle Royale goodness. And with the recent deal between Xbox and Nintendo, where Xbox is promising to bring games like Call of Duty to Nintendo consoles, gives me hope that maybe we'll have native support for Warzone on the Steam Deck. We just need the anti-cheat to work. But that brings up one of the major flaws of the Steam Deck, and its compatibility with certain titles. The deck can play a ton of games, but it can't play all of the games. Some games like Destiny 2, for instance. While I'm not particularly interested in playing Destiny 2, I know a lot of people really like that game. And similarly to games like Dead by Daylight, another very popular title, those games are simply unplayable on SteamOS. Will that change in the future? I hope so. Lots of games have actually been patched and seen updates to specifically add more compatibility with the Steam Deck. Sometimes those updates come in the form of a new Proton update, which Proton is the compatibility layer that exists to make Windows games work on Linux or SteamOS. Or the updates come directly from the game developers themselves, which gives me hope that even more devs will continue to consider the Steam Deck compatibility as a priority when creating new games. The other massive issue is that most competitive games utilize anti-cheat software to deter cheating in their games, which I think is very valid and important to do in today's gaming world. People will always find some way to get around anti-cheats, but I think they're very important to keep things as fair and level for everyone to enjoy gaming as a whole. But these anti-cheats are some of the biggest reasons why games like Destiny 2, Dead by Daylight, Halo Master Chief Collection, Call of Duty Warzone 2.0, and so many other games aren't playable at this point, even though the Steam Deck is very capable of running these games at its screen's native resolution. If these games are important to you and it's a deal breaker if you can't play them on your handheld, I understand. This is why so many people choose to install Windows on their Steam Deck. But as of right now, there is no official support for dual booting SteamOS and Windows currently. So as far as I understand, you have to pick between the two. And the Windows experience on the deck is pretty subpar since Windows is not really made for a mobile handheld like the Steam Deck. There are devices made by companies like Ioneo and GPD that fill in the gap though. Handhelds that come with Windows 11 pre-installed with tools to help you along with your Windows and handheld experience. I wish I did, but I don't have experience with those devices. But I can imagine that it's just not as convenient as SteamOS is from a usability standpoint. Not to mention that these devices from Ioneo and GPD are typically twice the price as the Steam Deck. Similarly to Xbox and PlayStation, Valve has the ability to sell their device at a much lower cost because they know you will be buying games from their store, which of course is Steam. Another alternative that I mentioned earlier is streaming games to your Steam Deck using services like Xbox Cloud and Nvidia's GeForce Now. I've tested playing Fortnite and other Xbox Game Pass games like Hi-Fi Rush, and I can honestly say I've been impressed. Sure, sometimes there can be some artifacting here and there, but it's actually pretty playable. I've won a few Fortnite matches playing this way, even though I'm pretty out of practice shooting with a controller. If you don't pay for Xbox Game Pass, GeForce Now is a good alternative that works and can be set up very similarly to Game Pass. And it's the only way that I've found to play Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck without having to install Windows. But none of these are going to be a good experience if you don't have a good internet connection or network in your home or where you're gaming. And in the case of GeForce Now, if you don't pay for it, you have to sit in a queue and wait to play whatever game it is that you want to play, and you only have a certain amount of time to play said game. But none of the downsides have made me regret purchasing my Steam Deck. Owning the Steam Deck has really opened my eyes to a lot of the games that I've been missing out on. Not only that, but I've been really enjoying the more casual gaming experience that I get when gaming on the deck. On our recent trip to Chicago for a wedding that my partner was in, it was really awesome to be able to chill in the hotel room and have the deck for some casual gaming while I waited for her to get her hair done, or to kill some time before I had to take a lift to the venue. And I said I would talk about it earlier, but yes, I bought another Steam Deck, which is for my partner so that she can have something to game on when the power goes out, or for late night in-bed gaming sessions, or for travel, or to avoid the feelings of FOMO. When our power went out earlier this year, I was happy sitting on the couch playing games, while she was bored enough to actually have pulled out a book, which isn't something that she normally does these days. Overall, I'm very happy that I took the plunge and bought my Steam Deck when I did. I think the only thing that I would have done differently is buy the 64GB model instead of the 512 to save a bit of cost. I'm the type of person that is comfortable opening things up and tinkering. So aside from the difference in screen coating and slight difference in the included case that you get, I think that I would have been very happy with the base model deck. Initially, I wanted to avoid having to upgrade the storage in my deck myself, but in retrospect, it's not a difficult thing to do for someone like myself. So if you're like me and you like to open up your electronics, go for the 64GB model and upgrade it yourself in the future. All right, to wrap this video up, I asked Twitter what they wanted to know about the Steam Deck, and I'm going to do my best to answer each of these questions. Question number 1 is from ToriLyn_XOX. She asks, in your opinion, what makes the Steam Deck worth it? First off, hi Tori. Tori is one of the mods in our Discord server. Well, Tori, I'd have to say that the thing that makes it the most worth it for me is how it changed how I feel about gaming in general. It's just been sort of fun reliving the experience of taking my games to the couch and snuggling up underneath a blanket or a dog. Question number 2 is from Mark Steelface, and they ask, what is the offline capability? Obviously, the main reason for getting one of these is the portability. Like, I want to take this on flights. I've heard that some games and functions don't work offline. Great question, Mark. So far, I've spent a majority of my time connected to the internet, either via home Wi-Fi or hotel internet. But I think this is completely up to the game and what they do in terms of whether or not the game needs to be connected to the internet to work or not. For example, Hitman 3 is a always online game, which in this case means you have to be connected to their servers to play the game. But if you play something like Vampire Survivors or Stardew Valley or any other game that doesn't require an internet connection, you'd be fine to do so. Just remember that after you've played offline and you're thinking about picking the game back up on your PC, make sure your deck connects to the internet so that you can upload your save files to the cloud so that you don't lose your progress. Next question is from KingLuki_TTV. And they ask, is every Steam game supported? Have you found any that don't work as well? Another really good question. Well, I will say in my experience, I've had a few games that the deck told me would work fine, but didn't work automatically. Take Gunfire Reborn, for example. Valve says that this title is a verified title with a green check mark and everything, which means it should work completely fine. But when you go to launch the game, it just crashes, taking you back to the game's launch page. Is there a fix for this? Yes, and this sort of brings up a good point about the deck. There are so many people out there now with the Steam Deck and so much support from Valve and the community that if you have any issues, it's likely that someone else has had the same issue. A quick Google search revealed that all you need to do is type this into the launch options bar in general under the game's properties. This makes the game start up how it should. How does it work? No idea. But the fix is really easy to find in a Reddit post and the issue is solved. So basically, Luke, to answer your question, a ton of games are supported on the Steam Deck, but not all of them. Most of those being the ones I talked about earlier, like Call of Duty or Destiny 2, where the anti-cheats don't play well with SteamOS. And that's mostly up to Valve and the developers of the anti-cheat to get it figured out. If the dev isn't interested in supporting the deck, you're kind of SOL. But most games do work, and they work really well. Last question is from Hobeard, and they ask, is it overall a recommended product you'd say for someone looking for a good mobile gaming experience? Asking because I value your opinion. Thanks, Hobeard. That means a lot, actually. Overall, I would absolutely say yes to that. Now, I know that you specifically are into Valorant, but you probably wouldn't want to play it on the Steam Deck anyway. But for casual gaming and even some extensive classic game emulation, the Steam Deck gets a 2 thumbs up from me. All right, I think this video has gone on long enough. Thank you for watching. Sorry for taking so long to make another video. If you liked the video, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton. And share this video with a friend that maybe wanted to wait a little while to see if, you know, the Steam Deck was gonna hang around for a bit and maybe was a little better than this thing here, the Steam controller. I think it's good. I think it's pretty cool. I like playing games on it. Also, leave a comment. Tell me all the reasons why you love your Steam Deck. And if you don't have one, why? What are you doing? What are you waiting for? Just get one. Just go buy one. Just do it. Just buy it. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video and have a good week.